All right, our last talk is from Elizabeth Chertavian from Medicus Economics, who's going to be reporting on the results from the survey we put out last year around economic impact. For those who participated, we thank you. And it's always important for us to report back what we're learning when we ask you to do a survey. So here's some early results. Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. As Ryan said, I'm Elizabeth Chertavian. I'm a principal at Medicus Economics. For the past almost 2 years, my colleagues and I have been working with FAST to help develop the economic evidence that will be needed for the access that was so importantly discussed earlier by Ryan when these Angelman therapies do become available. So much of what we do at Medicus is trying to quantify the economic impact of disease. And that's becoming very important when we get to that access stage and are communicating with economic decision makers, from policymakers to payers and everyone else. So the economic impact of a disease is borne by many, many groups. It is borne by insurance payers, of course. It's also borne by healthcare systems and providers, governments and society more broadly, but of course it's also borne by patients and their caregivers. So what we set out to do with our Caregiver Impact Survey was to quantify that one piece of the pie, and it's important to remember that this is just one piece, but it's an important and actually often understudied piece of the pie. It's not something that always gets attention when we talk about that economic impact, but the great thing is patient foundations like FAST, as Ryan mentioned this morning, are so incredibly well positioned to help generate that evidence because of all of you in the room who are caregivers, and you can participate and help us generate that evidence. So that was the goal of our survey. As many of you may remember who were here last year, we launched the survey right here in this ballroom and outside. In 2022, you may remember some of my colleagues sitting at a booth outside and begging you to come take our survey. We had laptops, and other colleagues of mine, Sarah and John, got up and explained the importance of the survey. So we're excited to be here 1 year later to be able to share those results with you. The Caregiver Impact Survey was launched as a module inside the Global Angelman Registry. And I would be remiss at this point if I didn't thank Megan and everyone at the registry team for all of the hours and hours and hours of work they put in to help us. They coded the survey in the registry, they collated the data for us, and they were incredibly helpful partners. So thank you to the registry team. We focused on the US first, but with the goal that our survey could eventually be adapted and replicated in other countries. And we have, a year later, we can stand here and tell you we had 105 people respond to the survey, which was fantastic. So, like I said, and as to echo Ryan again, thank you so much for all of you who filled out the survey. I know you get asked to provide a lot of data and information, but it's incredibly valuable to us. We want to quantify your lived experiences, and we couldn't do that without your input, so thank you. So what did we find? Our survey found that on average, caregivers incur more than $85,000 of costs per year when caring for persons with Angelman syndrome. It's important to remember that that number is both includes monetary and non-monetary impacts, but we can use accepted health economic methods to put a value on those non-monetary impacts as well. As is often seen, especially in the case of rare pediatric conditions, work impairment due to caregiving was a huge piece of the cost puzzle. As you can see in the pie on the right, it was almost half of our costs. And I'll share a few more details on this later, but that includes things like those of you who reduced your work hours or stepped back entirely from work in order to provide care to your loved one with Angelman. And then the second biggest category was all of the costs that you spend, the dollars you spend out of your own pocket on supportive therapies, devices, and other things to support the needs of your loved one with Angelman. It was important for us to benchmark this to what we know about rare disease caregiving costs more generally, and in fact, these numbers do fall in line with what we expected to see. They're a little bit higher than what we see in DMD, for example, which I think is expected given all of the impacts of Angelman syndrome from cognitive and behavioral sleep, and beyond. So that was reassuring and helpful. It's also important to remember that this is an average. It certainly doesn't reflect the range of all of your experiences, but it's still nonetheless, as we think back to that pie on the first page, it's important to quantify this piece of the pie. So we were very happy to be able to do that. Just some other numbers that came out of our survey. As I mentioned, more than 50% of you, or about 50% of you, reported stopping work or cutting back on work hours to spend more time caring for your loved one with Angelman syndrome. Among respondents who reported a loss of leisure time, and that was the vast majority of you, I think it was 90% or more, the average time you traded from your leisure to your caregiving duties was about 12 hours a week, which is quite significant. Among all of the categories expenses, you reported to us that you had supportive therapy expenses, such as speech, occupational, and physical therapy expenses were the most common. And the average household reported spending more than $3,000 out of pocket annually on these items. And lastly, even when you're at work, you report being 55% less productive due to, I'm sure, the incredible amount of mind share that you devote to your caregiving responsibilities all throughout your day. So these are incredibly impactful numbers, and again, will help build this story of the economic impact of caregiving for persons with Angelman that's so important as we work for that access to these therapies. So where do we go from here? We're working on publishing the results of this study in an academic journal. The goal is to have this data available to all manufacturers and the broader Angelman community as you communicate with the economic decision makers and achieve that access to the therapies as they become approved. The survey continues to live in the Global Angelman Syndrome Registry. We can continue to expand these results as more and more people take the survey. It's one of the modules in there, and we can think about adapting it to other countries as other countries, look to gain access to therapies in their countries as well. And lastly, if we think back to where we started, this is one piece of the pie, and FAST is committed to filling out that pie as much as we possibly can. So I know FAST, along with the help of Medicus and others, are continuing to explore other studies that can help quantify the full economic impact and support insurance coverage for future therapies. So with that, thank you very much. And again, once again, thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. It was so helpful.